assuming you live from London, but tonight we are broadcasting from Northern California. I was asked to introduce tonight's speaker. His name is Rex Crandall and his topic is the part of estate planning series of classes called the Advanced Healthcare Directive and End-of-Life Decisions. Hopefully you will learn many new things because he has a way to view the world that is rather unique. I am personally immortal, so the end-of-life decisions will only apply to you mortal people. Mr. Crandall has a professional practice in Walnut Creek, California, and his firm provides estate, trust and income tax services. The projects include estate planning, estate administration, probate, at times estate litigation, as well as income tax for individuals, businesses and estates. He is an attorney and a CPA with a background in real estate. He teaches classes on estate planning, estate administration and court accounting that is needed for trusts, probate assets, guardianships and conservatorships. He likes to creatively solve problems that help people. His mission in life is to help as many people as possible solve problems and maintain self-sufficiency. Well, let's start the class, so help me welcome Rex Crandall.
Okay, well that's the official starting. We had Queen Mom that I asked to participate, and she was so kind to do that. She wasn't doing anything tonight, so welcome everybody. Tonight we're going to be covering a lot of different things: advanced healthcare directives, end-of-life decisions, and it seems like some of these topics just keep going and going. As I'm researching, I come across new things. But we are going to hit the Advanced Healthcare Directive, incapacity, agents, risks, and procedural things when you try to use the Advanced Healthcare Directive, and some of the more common end-of-life decisions that people should consider. So the advanced healthcare planning is to make decisions about your healthcare you want to receive if you have a medical crisis. And your decisions are based on your own personal values and your loved ones. So it's basically what your family and you agree to. This happens to me, my daughter and her husband. Advanced care planning includes considering life-sustaining treatments, deciding on what types of treatments you would want or not want, your personal values, a written document, and then letting the healthcare workers know. When I'm doing estate planning and I get this whole package of forms done, I remind my client that they need to get that healthcare directive over to their healthcare provider, and hopefully all of them are doing that. So what is healthcare directives? So you do two things. You appoint an agent, and there's several names for them. I try to just stick with one name, but some people use durable power of attorney for healthcare. It's proper, but it's too confusing with the durable power of attorney for financial management. Healthcare agent's fine, healthcare proxy. Attorney, in fact, I don't use that term, but advanced healthcare directive is what I normally default to. And you should pick someone who's going to be an advocate for you. You don't want somebody who's milquetoast and can't assert themselves, because when sometimes they meet adversity within the medical community. So basically, we know a little bit about what an advanced healthcare directive is. What happens if you don't have one? Well, the first thing is you cannot tell your doctor what you want. You want this procedure or that, and if you can't communicate, some people say, well, let my doctor decide. No, you can't do that. Healthcare providers may want, they have bias. They may want more procedures or less procedures, and it may not have anything to do with your health. It's also prohibited by law. So if somebody becomes incapacitated and they're not able to make their medical decision, what happens? Well, you end up having to get out your checkbook and starting to learn about conservatorships, because that's the only way that you're going to be able to get your medical decisions effectuated or decided upon, because the medical provider cannot do that. And the conservatorship cases, that's a whole big area on its own. Basically, somebody petitions the court and says, I want to be the conservator. And they do a background check, and there may be competition. 2 or 3 people may want to be conservator, and the person who needs the care is a conservatee or the ward. And it may just be for finances, or it may be for personal care also. It's quite a bit more expensive than just having advanced healthcare directive. And if you have family that can do that, it would be much preferable. Okay, so when you're dealing with medical decisions and advanced healthcare directives, you keep coming across this concept called HIPAA, or Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. And they hyped it as being good for confidential records, can't give out any records. Usually when I look into those laws that talk about privacy, it says they can't give it out. They go on and on about how they can't give it out. And then you read a little bit more and they say, we can give it to any governmental agency who asks for it, who doesn't even need it. The government is usually always exempt. But it is important because it's something that doctors have to deal with. So one thing when you're thinking about situations, you have adult children, perhaps they're away at college, and if they get sick or unable to communicate, it's real frustrating because the parents can't talk to the medical provider. They can talk, they're not going to get any answers, because after age 18, they have to have their own healthcare directive in order to be able to communicate with medical providers. So either have the HIPAA waiver within a healthcare directive, or you can have a HIPAA waiver standalone. And a HIPAA waiver by itself does not allow you to step in and make medical decisions. It just allows you information.
That's interesting.
Okay, so a lot of times there's a problem with advanced healthcare directives where they say that it's takes effect on incapacity. And it sounds fairly easy on the surface, but if there's situations where the doctors won't talk to the person who's trying to get the authority, and it creates a problem because the person may be incapacitated, but the doctors are so worried about getting sued that they're afraid to give any information, and it becomes kind of a catch-22, kind of between a rock and a hard place. And one way to get around that, there's no requirement to name a doctor to determine incapacity. You could have your spouse determine incapacity. You just name the person and how you want it. Some people will use 2 physicians, 1 physician, but you could use, you know, Aunt Maggie or something. I don't know, but it's you don't have to use medical personnel.
That's good.
When you have a full estate plan, the other documents, like the durable power of attorney or the trust or the will, none of those documents do anything to help in this particular area. Just the HIPAA waiver and the advanced healthcare directive. It sometimes causes a delay getting things taken care of, especially if the patient had not given it the advanced healthcare directive to their doctor ahead of time. So here comes somebody and the doctors are suspicious about, where's this is a phony document or something. So it's real good to get that done and filed with your doctor ahead of time. So where does it say I have to get a conservator? Well, if you're not able to communicate and handle your own affairs, provide for your own physical health or finances, then you're aiming for a conservatorship if you do not have an advanced healthcare directive. There's two basic kinds of conservatorships. The most common one around the courthouse here is conservator of the person. And there you have a living arrangement plan and feeding and, life event type planning that you do and get it approved by the court, but it does not include handling any money. Then the other type of conservatorship, you can have both or either. The other type is conservator of the estate. So a person can't pay their bills, they can't resist fraud, they're not quite sharp enough to be able to pay their bills and those kind of things. So you want to try to avoid that. We deal with a lot of conservatorships because they all have to do court accounting. You have, when there's conservator of the estate, they have to turn in all the money that they're holding for someone else, report. At the end of the first 90 days, they have to list all their assets that they're managing. And then by the end of the first year, they have to turn in a full detailed account for every dime that went through the conservatorship estate. Okay, this is, I'm trying to, when I saw this section, there were a lot of people not really liking what the doctors do or sign this form and here. And so I took the view of the doctors and why are they doing what they're doing. So this section has to do with civil penalties for doctors, $100 per violation, up to $25,000. You have a chance to correct things, and they have certain disclosure requirements. I saw this TV show where this guy he was convicted for identity theft, and he was standing outside of dentist's office offering the employees going to work to pay him money to get social security number and personal data from the dentist clients. And he was talking to the news reporter, and he was going to be starting his prison time in short order, but that's the kind of thing that can happen, and then the HIPAA violation has occurred. With HIPAA for doctors, it can get pretty high. Willful, $50,000, $250,000 for an individual, jail term. So doctors are taking this quite seriously, and they should. The penalty tiers are on the right there. So that's one of the reasons the doctors are so insistent. The other thing I found out was on the Medicare system, any doctors who accept Medicare are required to get a HIPAA disclosure form from each of their patients and keep it in the patient file. And so that's what I determined is the reason that every time you go to a new doctor, they shove a form in your face and say, here, read it. You can, no, here, sign it. They don't really encourage you to read it. Anyway. Advanced healthcare directives, most of them now include a HIPAA release within the document, but if not, you can add it separate. It's better just to do one form. This is something I came across. It's called 5 Wishes, Advanced Healthcare Directive. And this is really good if you're doing a lot of this kind of work, because it's very user-friendly, and it goes into a lot of questions, health, care, end of life, different things, and they put it out as a booklet that the client would fill out. And it was developed, this guy in New York was working with Sister Teresa in this nonprofit and some other groups, and they designed this program or this booklet, and it's $5 for one of them, but if you buy 25, it's $1 a piece. So a lot of health centers or senior centers will hand these out, and I've included some of them. Okay, where are they? Do not resuscitate. Okay. So I guess I don't see that one right in this. Let me try opening up a different file, perhaps. I had been updating my files, and I just keep updating all the time. And let's see. Sometimes I don't remember all the changes.
While you're looking for that, Rex, I want to ask Denise, Tricia, Alberta, Gabaya, Tina, and Samantha to please put your last names in after your name, and also whoever is on a 760-889-1376 number, please put your name in or tell me who you are in the chat if you can, so you'll get credit for the class. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So, and make sure you put your social security number up there so everybody can have it. Just kidding. Here's a sample of the 5 wishes. So it goes through, it's very good for the client with all the questions, how do you want people to treat me? I thought of Aretha Franklin, RESPCT, but I don't think that's what they're asking. So it tells how it was developed and which states it applies to. It does apply in California, and it gives user information. You have one, how do you get, change it or get another one? And it goes through in a step-by-step, not real advanced level to get this information elicited out of the client to have them do a thorough plan. One of the things, just the terms in themselves sometimes can be tricky. Some people say, they say, oh, I don't want life support. And then I ask them, well, if you were unconscious in a coma, but you were expected to recover in 3 weeks, would you want life support? Oh yeah, well, I'd want it that way. You see, so it isn't, it's, you have to be really specific to get what the client really wants.
How can people order these, Rex?
In the page that I departed from, where is it? Second. The one above this. Here. The 5 wishes. This is a picture of their website. And there's a link to the location.
Great, thanks.
And if you did a search for 5 wishes advanced directive, you'd hone in on it also. But I think it's a great deal because I personally don't feel that I've been doing enough to help clients in this area of treatment types and end of life decisions and things. And I just like the idea of, you know, they're going through and training and eliciting information. Another one that I've used in the past is Kaiser Hospital has a fairly good advanced healthcare directive. And, but I think this is more detailed. AARP also has one. So it gets into the detail. If I'm in a coma, expected to never recover, severe brain damage, things like that, what different scenarios. And you just cross out the ones you don't want to leave in, and then they're knocked off the list rather than selecting them. And then place for signing. And I don't really agree with the way they finished it off. They here they're saying 2 witnesses. That's okay for California, or notarize, but the notary is not sufficient for California. And they're telling people only needed if you're in Missouri or North Carolina and things. So what I would do if I was helping a client with this is I would put see attached California all-purpose notary acknowledgement. And then I would put the standard notary form on it. And then they also give you this where you can put a little card in your wallet. So, Aging with Dignity, P.O. Box in Tallahassee, Florida. And well, I think your class material has this in it. So you would have this sample, and it has also this information and the telephone number.
Great.
Okay, so we're out of wishes. Now we're gonna resuscitate. Does anybody need CPR yet? No. Do we have any questions?
No, I think, no, we're good,
So,
Rex.
I was just going to type one. What's the implication, Rex, of choosing a primary physician? Why would you do or not do that?
I don't like to limit the agent to a certain physician. In Kaiser, which I belong to, they designate one person. But the problem that I have with designating a person, okay, is there an alternate? Do you have a third alternate? What's the procedure to elect a new one? It gets a little unwieldy, and I would rather that the healthcare agent have the flexibility to deal with circumstances and not specify them into being handcuffed. Does that answer it or not?
Well, yeah, so you're saying it would almost be the case where someone had no one else, the family, there was no family around or anything like that. And
you're talking about being the agent, not naming the physician?
No, I'm asking, why would you or would you not choose a primary physician? Why to designate one? Why would you do that or not do that?
Yeah, I try not to, and I leave it flexible because I think that's the most appropriate thing. Because you get into situations where some medical procedure is needed and that particular provider doesn't do it, or it needs a specialist, and I don't want to be meddling with the doctor and hospital group. And if the agent has the ability to choose, I would prefer to have their judgment, unless the client says, I've got to have Dr. Smith and nobody else. Well, then that's fine.
Yeah,
But
no.
we need to have some kind of alternate.
No, I got you. I just saw it as limiting. I was trying to think of a case where it would be a good thing, and I never came up with one.
Yeah, I agree. It's limiting. So DNRs, do not resuscitate. So we're saying here, person doesn't want to be revived. They don't want CPR. They don't want the electric shock. All the other types of emergency. So there is a form that we use for that. And it's different. There's two different types. One is a pulse, and we'll cover that one. And this one is, they call this pre-hospital do not resuscitate. From what I'm getting from that is that hospitals have their own. And I have included the top sheet here from Emergency Medical Services, and to the lower left, I've given you the link to be able to get this free form. And so we're talking about pre-hospital. So when you're calling 911 and they send somebody out, I guess you have to let them know that you don't want that care. We had an example here last year where somebody had a do not resuscitate order. They went to a different hospital than their own. They collapsed in the entryway. They provided resuscitation, got the person's heart going, and they're still alive today and glad of it. So it's most of the time it's an irrevocable decision, but that one they got a revoking. So you can put a card in your wallet and things, but I think a better way is to get some type of bracelet. And you don't have to go as far as these two people on the lower left. This gal here in Holland, she was protesting something about doctors, so she tattooed hers on her chest, do not resuscitate. And the story about this one, he had this tattooed on his chest, and the doctors were trying to decide whether they should resuscitate him or not. I think just read it, and it kind of tells what his decision is. The only trouble is when you change your mind, it gets really messy. You know, I thought maybe the way to fix that is get some latex house paint and just go over it, you know, and wouldn't see it anymore. But you're talking about the different copies. The first copy of the DNR should be retained by the patient, and the second copy retained by the physician. And then the third copy, you can use that to order. I think it's a really good idea, having the bracelet or necklace, because in that story I just gave you, the person did not have anything on them that would let medical personnel know he had a DNR, but it was probably better he didn't have. But there's a place in Turlock you can buy these. There's other ones. We'll get to that. So in a lot of these legal things, when you're letting rights go, there's a legal function, knowingly waived their rights or knowingly made the decision. So the form kind of, you know, gets people to say, you know, you have this right, you have that right, and you just peel them off one at a time for what the person does and does not want. And it's pretty simple. Just person has to decide what they want. There's one, should be. Okay. So there are several providers that make available the, oh, here they are. That pushed way down here. Pulse and medallions. It was a few pages ahead. These are three companies that you can get medallions for, or bracelets, let's say, for DNRs and Pulse, which we haven't covered Pulse yet. Okay, pulse. Physician order for life-sustaining treatment. And this one's a little bit more expansive, I should say, that they it's just not resuscitate. It's quite a bit more than that, and it cannot be filled out in just somebody's commercial office. The client has to have a doctor sign off on it before it's effective. And here's a link to a place where you can get the forms.
And don't the forms have to be on a particular color of paper? The pulsed?
Yeah, good point there. The pulse, what they like to see is it's a bright pink paper, and what you're supposed to do with them is put them on your refrigerator. So when the fireman comes in and breaks the door down because they got a 911 call, the first thing they do is look at the refrigerator to see if there is one. And then they go from there.
So Rex, let me ask one question about that. The physician who signs the post, do they necessarily have to be the physician to whom this person would normally be treated, or just some doctor approving this patient's decision or this person's decision?
I don't think it yet. It's let's see. Here's the signature part. Signature of patient. See, here it says physician, nurse practitioner, or physician assistant. So it just has to be filled out by this type of licensee.
Yeah.
It doesn't restrict anyone to use that provider. In case of emergency, that wouldn't work out too well.
Right.
But on the other hand, since it is a pulse, emergency wouldn't matter as much. They're not going to be providing the care. So, and the main thing they want to know that the person was cognizant. They knowingly and willingly decided to give out those rights. This other slide here I've included, it's coalitionccc.org, and they have a series of flyers on different aspects of care that somebody could decline. So there's one on artificial hydration, tube feeding, ventilator, or CPR. So that would be informative for people making those decisions, because it's not just one size fits all. There's so many different types of treatment. My cousin in the last month got those electric paddles on his heart twice, and got revived from that. And he said he's about had enough of that. He doesn't want to do it anymore. I guess it's quite shocking.
Oh,
I don't know how
no.
many bolts they put through there.
You really went and you just couldn't resist. Oh my God.
It was too easy. Fell
Man
out.
has
Right
no
there.
discipline whatsoever, I tell you.
Yeah.
Very funny.
Okay, so do not resuscitate forms. Here's a long list of different formats, DNRs and PULPs for your future reference, should you want to dig into it. Now we're going to talk about the California End of Life Option Act. It's kind of a takeoff on Dr. Kavorian, but this is statutory, and they will allow doctors to give life-taking drugs, but it has to be under extremely rigid circumstances and procedure. So the person must be 18, California resident, incurable, irreversible disease, expected to die within 6 months, cognizant to be able to to understand medical options, and they voluntarily ask for the drug, and they must be able to administer it themselves. So what happens with this is the person starts inquiring about it, and they talk to their doctor about it, and then the procedures are something I've never seen before, but like it. First of all, you have to ask your doctor verbally, hey, can you give me some drugs to kill me? And then you have to wait 15 days, and then you have to verbally ask them again. And then after the second verbal request, then you have to put it in writing to the doctor. Hey, I wasn't kidding. Please give me some life-ending drugs. And then the doctor has to bring in another doctor to consult with and verify the diagnosis and presumably the competence. The doctors are not required to participate in that if they have any, they're not required by any rules. And you can always go to another doctor. And health insurance, it says here that each plan will determine whether or not it's covered or not. The law does not require the insurance carrier to cover it. So there's a lot more details. It's quite a serious choice, but for a lot of people, if they're suffering, it makes sense.
So it sounds like the thrust of the law is that if you came in, whatever your age, you would likely die of old age before you got through all of these steps anyway.
That would be a kind of a circuitous view, but you do have to have a diagnosis that they're going to die before they're done with the procedure. And this is the one I like. The medication cannot be taken in public place.
Oh my God.
Now, how are they going to enforce it? All right, I'm giving you a ticket. For me, I'd consider, how about it right in front of IRS? So anyway, some laws are hard to enforce, especially that one. Okay, so definitions for End of Life Option Act, capacity, I think we know most of those. Life sustain. Before I leave that area, I didn't have a slide for it, but I meant to put it in. It's called palliative care. And when I started doing trusts a long time ago, what the hell's a palliative? And why do I want to care for it? Well, what it is, it's comfort, and it's when somebody's terminally ill, the objective is not to stop any medical or change a disease or anything like that. It's comfort of the patient to be able to die in dignity. So the palliative care part is part of this whole mix. And sometimes the doctors have a little trepidation about it because they give, pain reducing drugs and stuff, and they're worried sometimes that might kill the patient. So it's good to work that out with the doctors. And then with hospice, they're involved in the palliative care and have the ability to issue morphine for the person that doesn't have long to live. Okay, so this is sort of what I was saying. It's life-sustaining treatment. Okay, this one is prolong life without reversing a medical condition. So if somebody was in a vegetative state, they're prolonging life, but they're not going to cure anything. So list some of the things that people may or may not want to include in their documents. So I've listed some questions here. There's oftentimes a problem with medical and families where the person is dying and the medical facility wants to keep invasive treatments. So that's where your healthcare agent has to step up and assert what you had said. And hospitals have social workers, and if you don't have luck getting what the patient wanted with the doctors on the floor, you have to go into the other areas of case social worker or something else above the doctors. Okay, so anatomical gifts. Can I give my body parts? Yeah, you can, but you can't sell them. That's why when you donate blood, you can't get any commissions, you know, because that's a body part. So you can make anatomical gifts if you're 18 years or older, your whole body or just pieces and parts. You can put it in your advanced healthcare directive. You can give your agent under your advanced healthcare directive the right to donate organs. What happens to me, and you might have this too, every one of my clients, when I ask if they want to donate organs, they say the same thing. They're all worn out. Nobody's going to want my organs. What do they want a bunch of used parts for? Okay, so California has a program for anatomical gifts, and boy, California has no shyness about regulating everything to the nth degree. You get into this anatomical gift act, and you can do this, you can do that, you can do the other, and it's quite extensive. I flew airplanes for 25 years, small planes, and I would see in airports, people would have a box like this that was frozen in metal. And sometimes I've seen them in cars. And what they are is they're frozen organs, and they're transporting the organs to another location. They get volunteers sometimes to move organs to where they're needed. So in California, there's a system for it. You can put a dot on your driver's license, and there's a registry for organs. You can fill out the, I want to donate some stuff online. They say you can put it in a will, but my understanding is when a person passes away, the organs don't last too long. And by the time they find the will, I don't think there's going to be much left in usable capacities. So they need to have witness. Some of the stories I've heard, bad stories about anatomical gifts. One was in a Central South American country when I was there, and they were telling stories about guys that would go to the bar and they'd wake up the next morning with their retinas removed.
Nice.
Oh my God.
And evidently they got picked up and given some kind of drug, and they were transplanting organs without permission. I hear they do that in China, but another one that I'd heard about was in Spain. 30, 40 years ago, I don't know the exact time range, but they had a big problem in Spain where babies were being born. The doctors would tell the parent it was stillborn, and they would transfer the baby to an adoptive parent for high money. And it was a big problem in Spain, and people now are adults and they're trying to reconstruct what happened to them. It can be a mess. Donate California. It's really important. You know, California has created a nonprofit to, they didn't create it, but it's donatecalifornia.org. So it's not the state of California themselves that are handling the anatomical gifts. And the first thing that came to my mind is California taxes you an arm and a leg every place, every which kind of transaction. I've already given them an arm and a leg. I thought, well, maybe I'll just donate the rest when I die. But they don't want to have that stigma. So they say, go give it to the nonprofit. So, but that's not really supported by law. Okay, so pick and pull for used parts. Okay, any person knowingly selling parts for human organs, we've got punishment for you. So obviously it's not a good idea. Okay, so this section is a little bit of a history lesson. And I was surprised when I found out in the late 1700s, early 1800s, when people passed away, they would keep the body in the house. For the funeral was in the house. And they had a room in the house called a parlor. And they required someone in the family to stay with the decedent for 2 days because they had stories and situations where people have come back to life, and they didn't want to let them be alone should they come back to life. And and some of this came about by they started that practice because they had exhumed some bodies, and then they found that the lids of the coffins were all scratched because the person had come back and they couldn't get out. And if you look on the internet, there are several different types of patents and types of early 1800s burial chambers where they had escape routes and trap doors and things just in case you you decided to come back for a second time, then you had an option. And they had a thing called a wake. And what this was is usually a group of women in the community would help, and they would dress the decedent in white, and then they would have an in-house funeral and invite people, and they would stay overnight. And they would do other things, like they'd close off the parlor, and then they would play games and different things to kind of help them, you know, deal with the grief. And they had some other characteristics Americans used to do is when the person died, they turned off all the clocks to stop at the time of death for respect. Another thing they did was they covered or turned around all the mirrors because they were afraid that the spirit might get trapped behind the mirror. So it was quite a bit different than today. And that term parlor that was in the house ended up going away when that term was used and they started commercial funeral companies. And that's how the term funeral parlor came about. And that room that used to be named parlor, and it had doors on it, now we call it the living room. but that was the parlor. So now we're talking about human corpse and remains. How you decide. Now, this is your choice. I wouldn't leave this to your agents, but I do suggest that clients make all their decisions, funeral, gravesite, everything planned out so they don't put that burden on their family after they've gone. So cremation is getting more popular, donation to science, natural burial, without a casket, burial at sea. I used to see a lot of scattered ashes from aircraft. Here's a new one, alkaline hydrolysis, chemical cremation. And this basically, you know, they say in the Bible, from ash or to dust to dust. Well, this is what happens on this chemical. And then there's another type, water cremation, human composting. I don't know. Hey, don't stand on my flower bed. That's my dad.
Oh, man.
I guess it's, I don't know how environment, it might be toxic in my case, but.
Rex, are there sometimes are there laws and prohibitions about certain things? You can't necessarily throw the ashes wherever you want. I've heard that. I don't know.
Yes, there are some laws. You can't put it in the you can't put it in public places. J. Paul Getty lived in England, and when he died, they flew his body back to his house, big mansion, which I visited in Malibu. And he wanted to be buried there, but the law wouldn't allow him to be buried where he wanted because he didn't have a permit. So he had to stay on ice for a while until they figured out where to put him. Now this one's kind of fun, cryogenically frozen. Yeah, so you just freeze your body down to minus 96 Celsius or minus 320 Fahrenheit. And they say, well, if they come up with a cure, when they'll thaw you out. And I guess the big worry there is the power goes out. I'm sure.
Isn't that how Walt Disney is buried too?
Is it what?
Walt Disney?
I'm sorry, I'm not getting the question.
No, I'm saying that Walt Disney,
Walt Disney.
Yeah, that's how
Yeah,
they.
well, there's been, if you look at this picture, you see all these I've seen a lot of science fiction movies where people are out in space, and during the time they're frozen, and then they come back to life when they get to the planet. So now this one's my big hit there, and I'm thinking for myself now. These are plasticized bodies, and I've been to 2 exhibits now that have them. I put the exhibit here, the local one. These people donate their bodies, they're injected with plastic, and it is so educational. I've seen lungs cut in half where I could see a smoker and a non-smoker, and just amazing learning about bodies. But I was telling my daughter, she didn't like the idea, but I told her I was gonna have that done to me when I pass away, and then I could be in her front lawn like a statue.
I've been to one of those exhibits, Rex. I've seen it too.
Real educational.
Yeah, they're amazing.
Yeah, great medical information. And so they do all kinds of things to expose different parts of the body and show you how it works. It's really good. And another thing people should consider, picking out caskets, urns, things like that, mausoleums, burial at sea. This is what they did in Europe quite a long time ago, is they would put burial mounds. And all over Europe, they have these mounds, and they would bury people with all their stuff in the mounds. So then, you know, that's an urn. I was thinking, well, my first choice for me personally is the plasticization, but the secondary is an urn that looks like one of those Aladdin's lamp. So I figured, you know, maybe what I should do is get one of those and pick it out and put it in my plan that I've got this particular one. And, you know, it adds a little pizzazz to your going, you know, you can tell your survivors that all you need to do is rub this and I'll give you 3 wishes. And if you believe that, then I've got a bridge to say.
So Rex, are you thinking you're going to come out of that thing built like that guy there, really buff and whatnot? You know, like
Well,
a genie? He's always
this
a
guy
big
here,
dude.
yeah, you know, it's all hot air, so I don't see why not. I can puff out my hot air all the time. I think that's a factor of your ego during life. And, you know, if you had a big ego when you're alive, and I don't know. Okay, summary and conclusion. These are things I suggest. Get an advanced healthcare directive, select an agent, consider the DNR and the pulse, take care of all your final decisions for your survivors as much as you can, because it's really tough for them to make those decisions after somebody's passed. And if you have adults or anyone else you're caring for, get a healthcare directive for them. And then ask yourself, if I was to go to Europe for 6 months, what would I need to have happen around my house? Pay my bills, water my plant, feed my dog, you know, whatever. So, and the overall advice is chill out, plan something dramatic or surprising when you leave the planet. As they say, you only live once, so have a blast while you last. Now, this is what's so good about estate planning. You see, you're going to be leaving the planet here. So this is graphic. Your seatbelts are secure. You're ready for liftoff. You're all ready for this ride into eternity. And then you get launched into outer space, or at least your spirit does. Oh, another thing people do, and they still do it, is when somebody dies, they open all the windows to let the spirits out.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so here's the above graphic showing my estate plan. So it's like all lock loaded and ready to rock and roll. So, and that's about it. And it's just about 7 o'clock too.
So do we have anybody that has any questions before we leave? You can unmute yourself. Rex, the class was great. A lot of great
Really
information.
interesting.
Really great information.
I think not insignificant that all this dying talk and he ended on time. So, you know, there's just something about that.
I didn't want to croak for going overtime. I mean, when your time's up, when your time's up, that's all you got.
That's it.
Also, I do want to invite everybody to join us tomorrow night. It'll be our last happy hour for the rest of the year. And we're asking everybody to wear an ugly Christmas sweater or a pretty one if you want to look cute. And you know, I'm sure you'll look cute even in an ugly one, but we'd like everybody to join us for our last happy hour tomorrow night from 5 to 6.
It's your last one or last one for this year?
Well, it's the last one.
I thought you were taking this end of life thing seriously.
It could be, I don't know, Rex, it could be either.
You're not going to Guyana, are you?
No, no, we're not. But please, everybody, join us. And thanks, Rex. This class was so good. I got a lot of great information. I hope everybody else did too.
Very
So,
good. Very good.
Everybody's saying thank you. Sherry,
Thank
hi.
you, Rex.
Okay,
See you
we'll
tomorrow night, Sherry, hopefully.
we'll pick it up next time.
Yeah, hope you
So
come.
what is the next class?
It's in developmental stage. I haven't decided to do one. I do a lot of income tax, and I hear that happens right after the first of the year. So it might be a while, but I have some ideas that I don't want to commit myself to yet.
We're still trying to work too on that accounting class to see if we can, how we might break it down to give MCLEs, but we're still working on that. What I think Tracy and I need to get with you after the beginning of the year and.
Yeah, we should just have a talk. The problem of breaking it the way that you had originally thought was that it was right in the middle of the forms. And so it was in a lopsided break point.
Right, is there a way you could do the forms alone?
We
You know-
could, but it's incomplete because when somebody's burdened with that responsibility, they have to turn it in. They just-
Right, but I mean, do all the judicial council forms and then do the pleading and the accounting that we have to request from the court, but then do the forms in the next class that shows how we got to all those amounts.
Okay, that we could talk about it.
Okay. We'll talk about that.
Yeah,
So everybody's saying thank you, so I
Thank
think
you.
thanks for having
you're
me.
welcome.
Very
Rex,
good.
Okay,
Thank you.
bye.
Really good.
Have a good evening.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Top marks.
Thanks, Rex. It was really, really good.